A girl stands in an empty classroom, reminiscing about a guy she once believed was her soulmate, certain that no one could ever be better than him. The same man enters the room, bringing her back to reality. Her face reddens as she greets him, calling him brother. He reminds her that she should address him as Sensei in school. As they talk, a girl named Akane Minagawa arrives and greets them. The man looks shy upon seeing her. He approaches the ginger-haired girl and she hands him a folder he left in the teacher's lounge. Ms. Yasuraoka observes the scene. She silently leaves when he abandons her to talk with Minagawa. As she's walking, she bumps into a guy. She apologizes, explaining that she didn't see him, and he comments on her calm demeanor. Teasingly, he says he thought she would cry, and she responds by calling him stupid. They both retreat to a secluded spot and share a kiss. As they embrace, each one envisions the person they genuinely want to be with. Although they are dating, they both realize that they're simply substitutes for the ones they truly desire. Everything started in April, when the protagonist begins her junior year of high school. She stands by the window, admiring the cherry blossoms. When the teacher arrives and asks the students to take their seats, she recognizes the voice immediately. Excitement bubbles up inside her at the thought of Kanai-sensei's recent appointment as her homeroom teacher, aware that she'll get to see him every day. She hurries to the teacher's lounge after class, but her smile fades when she finds him happily engaged in a conversation with Minagawa. Her excitement turns to frustration. At her house, Kanai-sensei joins her and her mother for dinner. Although Kanai-sensei enjoys the meal and compliments the food, Hanabi is far from pleased. Her frustration grows as she watches him. That night, while walking Kanai-sensei home, Hanabi reflects on how he used to talk about looking forward to finding the perfect wife. Lately, however, he stopped mentioning it. Hanabi wonders if Minagawa might be the reason for this change. Her thoughts drift back to a memory from elementary school. During a field day, since Hanabi does not have a father, Kanai-sensei had joined her for a race. This upsets her peers, especially a girl named Noriko. Hanabi points out the unfairness of Noriko's running shoes, which distracts enough people for Hanabi to slip away. Kanai-sensei searches for her and eventually finds Hanabi quietly sitting alone in a shady spot behind the school. To lift her spirits, they share the lunch Hanabi's mother packed for them. As they finish their meal, they talk about the challenges of having only one parent each, and how they can support each other when they feel lonely. Hanabi and Kanai-sensei wave goodbye to each other, and tears begin to well up in Hanabi's eyes. At school, she overhears two students talking about their young, new music teacher, Minagawa, and calling her hot. Anger boils inside her as she turns to glare at them, then continues walking down the hallway. She bumps into Minagawa. Their moment is interrupted by Mugi, who picks up scattered papers from the floor and hands them to the teacher. Hanabi watches their interactions closely and notices a look in Mugi's eye that suggests something more. Later, Hanabi and Mugi spend time together and realize they both have feelings for their teachers. In June, they begin to hang out more frequently. One day, they go to his house. She surprises him by wrapping her arms around him. He ends up on top of her and suggests they imagine being with the people they desire. He asks her to close her eyes and then kisses her. She feels a rush of emotions and shares with him that it is her first kiss and that it feels wonderful. Eager for more, she asks him to do it again. He removes her clothes and begins to explore her body. The next day, Hanabi returns to Mugi's house and they make a pact to start dating. They agree to end the relationship if either of them succeeds in winning over their desired love interests or if one of them falls in love with the other. They seal their agreement with a pinky promise. Hanabi peeks through the door, watching as Mugi talks with another student. A girl approaches her and mentions that they have not walked home together much this year and suggests they should do it more often. Mugi then exits the classroom and thanks Hanabi for waiting for him. Ekchan notices the situation and understands what's happening. Hanabi apologizes to her friend and leaves with her boyfriend. Ekchan watches them go with a blank expression. As they walk together, Mugi asks Hanabi if she wants to walk with her friend instead. Hanabi doesn't answer his question. Instead, she asks him for a sip of his water. Mugi hands her his bottle and then leans in to kiss her. Suddenly, a girl sees them and starts shouting at them, demanding that they stop. Hanabi, confused, asks the girl who she is. The girl turns out to be Noriko. Noriko used to play with Mugi when they were kids. Adults used to comment on how they looked like a prince and princess. This idea deeply resonated with her younger self, who wanted to be a princess. As she grew up, she tried to live out this fantasy by growing her hair long, staying away from boys, and surrounding herself with cute things, all in the hopes of being worthy of and attracting Mugi. Mugi introduces Hanabi and Noriko to each other. Noriko recognizes Hanabi from their previous encounter. Noriko assumes that Hanabi must have used manipulation to win over Mugi and has been hiding her unpleasant nature. Hanabi aggressively grabs Noriko by the collar and warns her to stay away from Mugi. Later, Mugi mentions what happened and comments that Hanabi shouldn't have been so harsh. Hanabi responds by saying that Noriko clearly likes him and he should turn her down properly. Mugi asks if she's jealous, but Hanabi insists that she's just possessive. They share a kiss, but as they do, Hanabi begins to question if that's really the whole truth. Mugi and Noriko run into each other at the school store. He asks if she's there to buy some bread as well. Mugi picks out a sweetbread and a savory one for her. Noriko hugs him tightly and gazes at him with sparkling eyes. They sit together with Hanabi for lunch. Mugi tells Hanabi that he is envious of her food. Hanabi tries to feed him, but Noriko snatches the food off the fork. She becomes angry when Mugi and Hanabi ignore her. Hanabi then confronts Noriko, reminding her to stay away from Mugi. Noriko refuses to back down and accuses Hanabi of using Mugi to brag about dating someone cool. Noriko then runs away. Ekchan watches the scene from a distance. Later, Hanabi helps Kanai-sensei carry papers to the language prep room. She feels excited to be alone with him. Just as Hanabi decides to confess her feelings, they're interrupted by the sound of Minagawa playing the piano next door. Kanai-sensei softly comments on how talented Minagawa is. Later, Hanabi and Mugi are at karaoke. Hanabi sings loudly, letting out her frustration. Mugi asks if she's thought about giving up and finding someone else. Instead of answering, she hands him the other microphone and asks him to sing with her. While they're singing, Hanabi starts to cry. She tells Mugi that Kanai-sensei is the only one for her. Mugi says he does understand and gets intimate with her. Mugi remembers a past moment of intimacy with someone else, which makes him pause. Hanabi, noticing his hesitation, calls out his name with concern. Mugi reminds her to envision him as Kanai-sensei. They continue being intimate, with Mugi now imagining Hanabi as Minagawa for the first time. At school, a group of girls approaches Hanabi and asks her for romance advice. Mugi encourages Hanabi to hang out with them. He gets close to her face, and Hanabi wonders if he'll kiss her, but instead he just pats her head. Later, Hanabi and Ekchan spend time together. Ekchan confides that she has a crush. Hanabi invites her to a sleepover, and Ekchan agrees. At home, Ekchan nervously packs for her overnight trip to Hanabi's place. She shyly wonders if they'll need to share a bed. When Ekchan arrives at Hanabi's apartment, she makes things awkward by straddling Hanabi in bed and kissing her. Hanabi looks at her, stunned. The story of Ekchan and Hanabi's friendship begins one day on a crowded train. Hanabi notices that a man is trying to assault Ekchan, so she moves closer to her and asks if she's being bothered by the man standing behind her. Hanabi pulls out her phone and snaps a picture of the man, which prompts him to back away. After the train ride, Ekchan thanks Hanabi for the help. Hanabi keeps holding Ekchan's hand and checks to make sure she's okay until they reach the venue. From that moment on, Ekchan starts to develop feelings for Hanabi. Hanabi blushes as Ekchan is on top of her now. Ekchan looks at her with teary eyes and says she knows Hanabi doesn't have feelings for Mugi because she's been watching them. Ekchan wonders why Hanabi is in a relationship with Mugi and she starts to cry. Hanabi reveals the truth to Ekchan. Ekchan takes Hanabi's hands, intertwining their fingers, and asks why Hanabi can't be with her instead, offering her comfort and support. Then she confesses her love to Hanabi. In the morning, Hanabi feels distressed and is lying in bed, unable to shake off the situation. Her mother interrupts her thoughts, asking her to run an errand. As Hanabi walks to the store, she reflects on the night before and realizes how emotionally overwhelming it is to be the object of someone's affection. Later, as Hanabi sits down on a nearby staircase, she sees that her own situation with Mugi and Kanai Sensei is nearly the same dilemma. 4 years ago, Mugi is with his friends, still freshmen, when a group of junior high girls observes them. One girl, Mei, catches his attention, and her friends tease her about her interest in younger guys. Mugi recalls an intimate moment with Mei, remembering her body and the passion she directed toward him. Suddenly, he wakes up, realizing that this flashback was just a dream that had left him aroused. He glances over and is startled to find Hanabi standing in his room, having let herself in. Embarrassed, he quickly pulls the covers over himself. To his shock, Hanabi crawls into bed beside him and snuggles up. He tries to push her away, but she notices his arousal. Gauging her reaction, he tells her to touch him. Mugi recalls a significant memory with Mei. Mei reveals she won't be attending high school. Mugi, overwhelmed with emotion, starts to cry. Mei comforts him, reminding him that he loves Minagawa, and apologizes for taking away his chance to fully enjoy his adolescence. Mugi keeps his deeper feelings to himself, which are more genuine than Mei ever realized. Mugi stops Hanabi before she can touch him, saying he wouldn't be able to stop himself if she continues. Hanabi encourages him not to hold back. With his guidance, Hanabi, despite her inexperience, manages to pleasure him. Later, Hanabi tells Mugi that she feels at ease with him. When he asks why, she gazes at him with admiration and explains that their experiences together make her feel comfortable and secure. Mugi points out that they haven't even slept together yet. Hanabi then climbs on top of him and asks why he's still hiding under the covers. As she begins to cry, Mugi sits up to look at her, and she reveals that she wants to try to love him. This confession brings smiles to both their faces. They later go to a restaurant, where they are taken aback to see Minagawa with a tall, blonde man. The man asks Minagawa if she knows them. She explains that they're her students. She tries to get the man to leave her side, but he wraps his arm around her waist and kisses her neck. He then pulls her away, and as she's being let off, Minagawa apologizes to Hanabi and gives her a sly look. Minagawa suggests that they should keep each other's activities a secret. At school, Hanabi watches as Minagawa and Kanai Sensei walk away together. Mugi approaches her and reveals that he knows the man Minagawa was with. He explains that the man was once a student she tutored. With a smile, Mugi comments that they must have been involved in similar work when they ran into them at the restaurant. Hanabi walks away, leaving Mugi confused. Unable to understand why Mugi is so blind to the truth, Hanabi wanders alone. Hanabi confronts Minagawa and asks if the man she was with at the restaurant is her boyfriend. Minagawa, shocked, smiles and denies it, saying he's just a friend. Breaking the silence, Minagawa then asks if something is wrong. Just then, the school bell rings, and Minagawa quickly suggests they continue their conversation after school. As Minagawa leaves, Hanabi notices that she's still wearing the same outfit from yesterday. As Minagawa rides the train, two men sit on either side of her. She recalls a memory from high school when a boy named Saito approaches her to return a handkerchief she dropped. Saito is her friend's crush. When he hands her the item, she touches his hand, drawing him closer to her, even though she knows her friend is watching. Minagawa isn't interested in Saito. Instead, she relishes the attention he receives from others. Later, she finds her friend crying to herself. That day, Minagawa realizes that she enjoys exploiting people's feelings. Now, Minagawa lies naked in bed with Terauchi, who is trying to be intimate with her. She asks him what happened to the girl he was dating. Terauchi replies they broke up, and immediately, her interest wanes. Even as he fondles her breasts and kisses her neck, Minagawa feels indifferent, reflecting that there is no one around to validate Terauchi as someone desirable. Minagawa thinks about why she's been spending time with Kanai-sensei. She knows Hanabi likes him. When Kanai-sensei asks about her work, she declines to tell him and suggests they talk in music class instead. After he leaves, Hanabi comes up to her. Minagawa remembers why she's interested in Hanabi. She's noticed how popular Hanabi is with the boys at school, seen Noriko sadly watching Hanabi and Mugi together under an umbrella on a rainy day, and observed how differently Hanabi acts around Kanai-sensei. Minagawa's real purpose is to hurt Hanabi. Kanai-sensei waits for Minagawa in the music room, reminiscing about the first time he met her. He remembers walking alone one day and being struck by how much her hair reminded him of his late mother. They locked eyes, and he fell in love with her at first sight. During their initial interaction, Minagawa removed a cherry blossom petal from his hair while he rested at his desk. With a sweet smile, she suggested they look out for each other since they were both new teachers. That's when he learned her name was Akane. Minagawa asks Kanai-sensei what he wants to talk about, and he confesses that he has feelings for her. At that moment, Hanabi stands at the door, shocked and heartbroken by what she hears. Minagawa catches Hanabi's reaction out of the corner of her eye. In an empty classroom, Hanabi sits on the floor, hugging her knees. She breathes heavily but has no tears, feeling she doesn't have the right to express her emotions. She worries about whether Kanai-sensei and Minagawa will start dating, and hopes they don't. Hanabi reflects on why she never confessed her feelings to Kanai-sensei. She questions if her hesitation was due to a fear that he would no longer be a part of her life. Hanabi arrives at Mugi's house to share what happened, but she hesitates and decides to leave. As she walks away, she runs into Ekchan and hugs her, tears streaming down her face. Hanabi apologizes for not recognizing Ekchan's feelings, and Ekchan pulls away, reassuring her that it's okay, before kissing her softly. They went home. Ekchan climbs on top of Hanabi and playfully asks if she feels nervous. Hanabi admits she is, simply because they're friends. Ekchan kisses her passionately, causing Hanabi's eyes to well up with tears. Concerned, Ekchan pulls away and asks if she should stop. Struggling to maintain her composure, Hanabi admits that it feels good when Ekchan touches her. Ekchan explains that the pleasure comes from her deep love for Hanabi, a love that is felt through her touch. The next day, Hanabi confronts Minagawa, who playfully asks if she's upset about Mugi or Kanai. Hanabi angrily questions if Minagawa knew about Mugi's feelings for her all along. Minagawa smirks and taunts Hanabi, suggesting that Mugi was just using her to fill the gap with an easy classmate. Minagawa gets excited by Hanabi's reaction. She lets her blouse fall, exposing her skin, and with a seductive look, she asks Hanabi what could be better than being desired by men. Hanabi's world changes when her father dies when she's a child. Her mother takes on Hanabi's sadness as her own, so Hanabi tries to act tough in front of her. Kanai-sensei becomes a bright spot in Hanabi's life and a safe place where she can finally let out the tears she hides from her mother. Now, she feels like he has left her behind. Hanabi wakes up to find Ekchan lying next to her in bed. She admires Ekchan's hair as she turns to face her. Hanabi's eyes widen And when Sanae asks what's wrong, Hanabi relaxes and simply wishes her a good morning. Meanwhile, in his room, Mugi lies in bed, thinking about how he knows the true nature of Minagawa. He decides he can't tell Hanabi, fearing she might hate him for it. This thought makes him laugh. He remembers when Mei revealed the true nature of his love interest. He saw Minagawa with an old man, and the next day when she came to tutor him, she was still wearing the same clothes. Mugi knows that she knew the effect she had on him, and was teasing him on purpose. Even though he understands how she manipulated him, he can't help falling for her. Later, while in bed with Mei, they talk about Minagawa. Mei bites his ear. Later, Mugi meets up with Mei and they revisit their old days together in a motel room. The two bathe together, and as Mugi washes Mei's hair, she blushes and points out that this is the first time they've slept together, where he willingly initiated the intimacy. Mei leaves the bathroom, and when Mugi returns to the room, he discovers that she's gone home without spending the night with him. The next day, Hanabi sees Mugi and calls out his name. They spend time together, and Hanabi notices how distant they've become. She wonders if he's hiding something from her, just as she is keeping Kanai-sensei's confession to Minagawa a secret. Hanabi begins to question whether their actions are just a way to fight off loneliness, and if Ekchan is enough for her, making her wonder if she no longer needs Mugi. As these thoughts cross her mind, she climbs on top of him and kisses him deeply. Mugi responds by rolling over and pinning her arms to the floor. Both of them blush as their kiss continues. They both pull away and stare at each other, each asking if the other has been with someone else. Neither denies it. Mugi gets up and pulls Hanabi with him, and they confess that they've been with others because what's happening between them feels so good. They kiss again. Hanabi then tells Mugi that she hates pain, yet it still feels good. And he expresses that the feeling is mutual. At his apartment, they continue their intense make-out session. Mugi asks Hanabi why she seems embarrassed, and teasingly calls her stupid. She looks down, insisting she's not stupid, then meets his gaze again. Mugi notices how she often looks scared, yet maintains eye contact. He realizes how beautiful she is in that moment. Hanabi then takes his hand and gently pulls it to her face, asking if they can sleep together. Kanai-sensei arrives to see if Minagawa has a response to his confession. Despite her lack of interest, as she finds him quite boring, she invites him out for the night. Over drinks, Minagawa, now drunk, loudly asks if he could try harder. Frustrated, she rests her head on the table. Minagawa leaves the restaurant, and Kanai-sensei chases after her. As Minagawa stumbles and falls, crying out, Kanai-sensei catches her and asks if she's hurt. Minagawa looks up at him in shock. Kanai-sensei sighs with relief and, accidentally calling her Hana-chan, remarks that he's glad she's okay. There is a brief pause before Kanai-sensei, very embarrassed, apologizes for the slip, explaining that it was a habit. A disturbing smile appears on Minagawa's face. She reaches up, cups Kanai-sensei's face in her hands, and kisses him. After a moment, she pulls back and gazes up at him. Mugi sees the fading love bite on Hanabi's neck, meanwhile, and sucks the spot, pushing her onto the bed. She asks him to stop, but he questions if she doesn't want the other person to see his marks on her. Hanabi says no and pulls him closer to her. Meanwhile, Kanai-sensei and Minagawa are at a motel. Minagawa wonders what Hanabi sees in him, then mentions that Hanabi is cute, and they seem close. He explains that she grew up near his house, and they're like siblings. Minagawa expresses feeling jealous of Hanabi. Kanai-sensei leans in and kisses her. Hanabi presses her forehead against Mugi's chest. She asks why they can't have sex. Mugi reminds her that she doesn't really love him. Hanabi's eyes widen in shock, and she says that she does love him, Mugi questions her sudden desire for intimacy, suggesting that something's wrong. Hanabi gets out of bed and begins to get dressed. Before she leaves, Mugi asks if she would like to start dating for real. Hanabi tells him that she's leaving. Just as she turns to walk away, Mugi grabs her wrist, stopping her, and asks if she's still a virgin. Their eyes lock, and after another moment of silence, Hanabi leaves. Mugi lies back on his bed, staring at the ceiling. Hanabi confronts a younger version of herself, expressing her need to outshine Minagawa, or she will feel empty. Her younger self reminds her that people's feelings are not a game, and that this won't bring true fulfillment. Later, Hanabi meets with Mugi and tells him that she's ready to start a real relationship with him. Mugi asks if she's coming home with him, but she says she has other plans. Hanabi goes to see Ekchan and shares the news with her because she cares and doesn't want to use her. However, Ekchan says she wants to be used and kisses Hanabi. Hanabi pushes her away, telling her that she'll not be seeing her alone after school anymore. Ekchan calmly agrees, and Hanabi runs off. After class, Hanabi heads to the library with her classmate, and Ekchan soon joins them, sitting next to her. Hanabi assumes that Ekchan is trying to act normal. However, her eyes widen in surprise when Ekchan's hand caresses her thigh under the table. Ekchan gently slides her hand higher, making it disappear beneath Hanabi's skirt. Blushing, Hanabi can only grip her book tightly and try to remain quiet. Suddenly, Hanabi passes out. When she regains consciousness in the school infirmary, Ekchan leans in and kisses her softly. Hanabi reminds her that they cannot continue doing this. Ekchan asks Hanabi about her recent situation with Mugi and if it's just to catch the attention of her real crush. She tells Hanabi that she'll accept her no matter how hurt or troubled she becomes. Ekchan says that it's easy to make someone fall in love by showing real vulnerability. Hanabi wonders if she wants to be completely genuine, and Ekchan asks what's wrong with keeping your true self to yourself. Later, Hanabi runs into the guy she saw with Minagawa at the restaurant. Seizing the opportunity, she agrees to go out with him. She plays the innocent and vulnerable role, asking him about his situation with her teacher. He tells her he's just one of many, and that Minagawa will never be his. Hanabi is shocked by this acceptance of his lack of importance and his willingness to spend time with her just as he tries to do the same with her. Hanabi tells Terauchi that she's a virgin and asks if he would still love her. She's eager to make him forget about Minagawa and fall for her. Terauchi kisses her and suggests they go to a motel, but she shyly refuses, saying it's a matter of feelings. He tries to convince her that physical pleasure will eventually lead to emotional connection. This reminds Hanabi of Mugi and her longing for him. She tells Terauchi that he's too superficial to understand. Offended, Terauchi wonders if he should leave, which makes Hanabi imagine Minagawa judging her and quickly tries to fix the situation, successfully keeping Terauchi interested. Mugi runs into Ekchan, meanwhile, who playfully warns him that Hanabi is popular with the guys and he should be careful. This makes him worry that Hanabi might be cheating on him. The next day, Mugi kisses Hanabi and invites her to his place, but she declines, saying she has plans. When he gets to his apartment, Noriko interrupts him. She tells him that Hanabi doesn't really want him. Noriko explains that if Mugi truly loved Hanabi, the truth about her feelings wouldn't bother him, and she could just move on. But since he doesn't seem to care enough, she asks why she can't also be with him. Mugi suggests they go on a date soon. As Noriko silently cries, Mugi considers telling her that he isn't her Prince Charming, but he decides against it because he cares for her. Noriko agrees. Hanabi is out with Terauchi. She's absorbed in her phone when he snatches it from her hand, trying to see what she's looking at. She tries to get it back, and when he teases her about being too close to him physically, she slaps him and walks away. He chases after her and suggests making it up to her at a hotel, but she snaps and scolds him for only thinking about sex. He leans in close and whispers in her ear all the things he would like to do to her, making her blush even more. His phone rings, interrupting their conversation. He says he'll leave, and when she asks who he is on the phone with, he tells her it's a girl who let him do what he pleases with her. Noriko and Mugi are on a date at the cinema. As they hold hands, she feels anxious. After the movie, Mugi says he's hungry and suggests they grab some food. Hanabi, reflecting on her own feelings, wonders when she became someone who craves attention, when all she really wants is to be with someone she loves and who loves her back. She calls Mugi, hoping to see him, but despite the phone ringing, he doesn't answer. After dinner with Noriko, she confesses her love for him. Before they part ways, Mugi leans in and kisses her. In his room, Mugi finds himself with Noriko. As he touches her body, he quickly realizes he doesn't like it and stops, apologizing to her. He reassures her that she's important to him. Noriko, upset and in tears, expresses her desire to feel wanted and to be touched. Without that happening, being important to him feels meaningless. The next day, Mugi and Hanabi meet and decide to be honest with their feelings before the summer break. They agree that they'll tell their love interests how they truly feel, and if both of them face rejection, they'll consider starting a real relationship with each other. Ekchan and Atsuya, her cousin, reconnect at a relative's funeral after 6 years apart. He notices that she has grown into a beautiful woman. At a cafe, Ekchan tells him to forget about her because she has feelings for a girl and dislikes men. Atsuya argues that he still has a chance because she doesn't hate him. Mugi and Hanabi stop studying and drift into their usual routine. However, in the middle of their activities, he hesitates. Hanabi suggests he imagine Minagawa instead, but he rejects the idea. He admits that it's been a while since he's struggled to picture Hanabi as Minagawa, which makes her anxious. Later, he walks her home. As they approach her house, she thanks him and assures him that she can continue on her own. She watches as he walks away. Back at home, she looks at pictures she took of Kanai-sensei, which remind her of their shared memories. She texts him to arrange a meeting, and he agrees. Mugi does the same with Minagawa. The following day, Hanabi meets with Mugi first. They agree to meet again at the same spot the next evening to comfort one another. Hanabi struggles to meet his gaze, and he embraces her, reassuring her that everything will be fine. She begins to blush. Mugi meets Minagawa, and she suggests they go to a cafe instead of just standing on the street, which surprises him. He confesses his feelings for her, and she responds by saying that she likes him too. At first, Mugi is taken aback, but then he recalls her tricks and manipulation. He tells her he believes she's lying and that he's been observant enough to know the truth about her. Minagawa argues that her feelings are genuine and that she cares about him. Mugi then thinks about Hanabi and how he doesn't want to abandon her. Despite this, he ends up in bed with Minagawa and confronts her about being a narcissist, accusing her of never truly falling in love with anyone and simply wanting to be desired. Minagawa gazes at Mugi with seductive eyes and tells him he's cute. Mugi, feeling a surge of determination, says he wants to be her first man to love. Meanwhile, Hanabi, blushing and looking down, reveals to Kanai-sensei that she has feelings for him. When he asks her how long she's felt this way, she explains it's been for a long time. Tears begin to fall down her cheeks. Kanai-sensei hugs her, and they both cry in each other's arms. He thanks her for her honesty. Afterward, Hanabi looks up at the moon with a smile, feeling a sense of hope and believing that she can move on, especially with the prospect of Mugi being with her. However, Mugi is preoccupied. fulfilling his desires with Minagawa. Hanabi wakes up and checks her phone, finding only a text from Ekchan asking if she's done her homework. She recalls waiting for Mugi the previous night, but he never showed up. He only responds to her text the next day, apologizing. Later, Hanabi and Ekchan go on a trip to Karuizawa, and they hold hands. In the car, Hanabi reflects on her broken heart and decides to keep herself busy. They visit Ekchan's relative's empty house, where they can have some privacy. To their surprise, Atsuya opens the door when they arrive. Later, the three of them share a meal together. Hanabi takes a bath while Atsuya and Ekchan wash the dishes. Atsuya tries to get closer to her, but Ekchan warns him to back off. Their interaction quickly escalates into an argument. Atsuya reminds Ekchan that Hanabi will never fall in love with her, which makes her frown. She asks him to shut up and warns him not to enter their room at night. During the night, the two girls decide it's time to seal the deal. The next morning, Hanabi wakes up, gets out of bed, and accidentally knocks a notebook on the floor. She finds a candy wrapper inside that she once gave to Ekchan. Atsuya and Hanabi go for a walk. He asks her to reflect on her feelings for Ekchan, noting that Ekchan is not someone to be used as a mere replacement. Meanwhile, the two girls spend time together in town, and at the park they share a kiss. Later, Ekchan informs Hanabi that she decided to distance herself from her even before the trip, and then gets up and walks away. Hanabi is left shocked and confused. Hanabi follows Ekchan and begs her to stay friends, but Ekchan yells at her, saying it's cruel and that they can't just go back to being friends. The two girls confront each other about their feelings, expressing their frustrations and vulnerabilities. Hanabi promises to wait until Ekchan is ready to open her heart to her. They hug and kiss. Mugi can't seem to resist Minagawa's advances. Even though he knows he should end things with her, he can't bring himself to do it. He tells her he loves her because he knows how awful she is, and she kisses him, which surprises him. Minagawa is getting bored with Mugi and thinks he's too naive. He, however, believes that she really likes him and is giving their relationship a chance. When Mugi asks her out on a proper date, she tells him it's Mr. Kanai's day. That reminds him that he's just one of the many men Minagawa dates at the same time. Meanwhile, Minagawa is on a date with Kanai at the aquarium. She notices something strange about him not pursuing her, and she remembers that their previous time together happened because she was very drunk. Now, she's the one chasing him. Later, while walking with Kanai, Minagawa runs into another lover who calls her a filthy woman who loves men. Seeing this as a chance to end things with Kanai, Minagawa admits that the lover's comment is true and that she can't live up to his expectations. As Minagawa is about to walk away, Kanai grabs her arm and pulls her into a hug. He reassures her it's okay to be herself and she doesn't have to stop what she's doing. This catches her off guard. When he asks if this is their last date, she says no. Back at home, Mugi confronts her and says he wants to go on a date. After some insistence, she agrees. Minagawa goes on a trip with Kanai Sensei and starts being herself around him, now that he knows the truth. She buys ice cream and shares it with him. When they arrive at the hotel room, Kanai is mesmerized by the view from the balcony. Minagawa lies down on the bed and says she's tired. Worried, Kanai asks if she'd like some water, but Minagawa grabs his arm and pulls him toward her, causing him to fall on top of her. He blushes and apologizes, but she puts a finger over his lips and suggests they just rest. Despite her suggestion, he quickly gets up and rushes outside to get water. Minagawa is left in shock. Minagawa wonders why Kanai isn't initiating anything intimate with her, especially since they've been intimate before. She recalls that night and realizes what prompted him to make a move was that she had him drink alcohol, which he normally avoids. Kanai relaxes in the water and then decides that he should go to their room to watch the stars with her. While reaching for a towel, he accidentally drops the glasses, causing them to shatter. Despite his blurry vision, he manages to make his way to the room. Minagawa asks him what he meant when he said she doesn't have to stop being a filthy woman. Kanai explains that she doesn't need to change it if she's doing it since she enjoys it. When she asks him how he feels about it, he takes a moment to think, which surprises her. Anxious, Minagawa insists that he must hate what she's doing. Kanai then asks if she would hate him if he doesn't get upset. Kanai then tells Minagawa that he loves her no matter what. Overwhelmed with emotion, she starts to cry, and he gently kisses her forehead. The next day, he surprises her by proposing marriage, and she happily agrees. Upon returning from her trip, Minagawa meets up with Mugi to share the news. After they say their goodbyes, Mugi watches her walk away and begins to cry. He calls out her name and tells her that he loved her when she was weak, manipulative, and broken. Now that she has changed, he realizes he loves the old version of her. Minagawa thanks him and walks away. In November, the school is holding a festival, and Hanabi's friends choose her to be a stagehand and help with the preparations. She agrees to assist. While she's standing by the vending machine, she sees Mugi passing by. At home, Kanai comes to visit her to share the wedding news in person. As they walk together, Hanabi makes a pinky promise to attend the wedding, which makes him very happy. She goes to her usual spot to relax and enjoy some solitude. Resting her head on her knees, she closes her eyes. As she drifts off, memories of her time with Mugi play in her mind. When she opens her eyes, she realizes she's fallen asleep. Hearing a noise behind her, she turns around and sees Mugi. They stare at each other for a while. At school, a boy approaches Hanabi to ask her out, but Ekchan steps in and tells him to back off, declaring that Hanabi belongs to her. Before they leave, Hanabi apologizes to the boy and thanks him, making him blush. Ekchan then reveals she was just joking and expresses her readiness for the two of them to become friends. Later, the students congratulate Kanai and Minagawa on their upcoming wedding and present the bride with a bouquet of flowers. Kanai notices Hanabi standing alone outside the crowd by the window and is about to go check on her when Minagawa stops him. Minagawa approaches Hanabi herself and hands her a flower. Hanabi remembers her meeting with Mugi. He apologizes, and they talk about various topics for the first time, using words rather than touch to express their feelings. They meet again under the cherry blossoms, both reluctant to let go of each other. Hanabi and Mugi care deeply for one another and come to a mutual understanding that they aren't ready to be together just yet. They say goodbye and walk away, each heading in their own direction. And that's the end of the anime. Thanks so much for listening all the way through to the end of the recap. And if you have, then you're not going to be surprised at my next request. Please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And as always, we'll see you in the next recap. Bye.